This is the CineSnob Podcast.
And welcome to episode 258 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I am Cody Villafana.
We had a little hiccup there at the start, Cody, because I had to throw a cat out of the room.
Yes.
He was tearing ass all over some shit, so apologies for that little blunder, Cody.
Apologies, P-A-W. Little cat humor.
He was being a dick. It's been a while since we've been here, Cody. It's been a few weeks. I think the last movies we talked about were Creed 3 and
Operation Fortune.
Operation Fortune, Rose de Guerre.
Yes.
But that's there's been a good reason for that, and that is because of South by Southwest.
Yeah.
I made my return for the first time since 2019. This has been, you did 21 and 22.
Mm-hmm.
I understand 21 was the all-at-home year.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
22 last year was the
Hybrid.
halfway back. And this was the first one, I think it's safe to say, all the way back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's most of the way back. I do think that there is, it is a lighter crowd, I think. I will talk about it maybe a little bit in a second, but like, in the mornings at the theaters, you could walk up and get a ticket to basically any movie at that 11 a.m. hour, which typically speaking, it was pretty packed, front to back previously. But yeah, I mean, I think it is mostly back and in full swing, and it felt like South by Southwest, that's for sure. Yeah,
I don't recall the last movie I saw at South by. But I did make it out to the world premiere opening night of Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd forgotten what a kind of electric environment that can be.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time. Needless to say, the crowd loved the movie. I liked the movie too. I mean, Festival Blinders we'll talk about a lot, but I enjoyed the movie. It was I missed seeing the Q&A because I was trying to catch a train that I was actually too early for. But what was your experience like this year?
It was good. I mean, I went for 4 days on the ground, and so I saw in those 4 days I saw 15 movies. So I was doing 4 a day, and then one I was only able to get 3 in. Just bouncing around to different locations and checking some stuff out in theaters. I watched some in a small theater at the Alamo Drafthouse. I watched a couple of movies big premieres at the Paramount, and then everywhere in between. Saw some celebs, as it were.
In the parlance of our times, celebs.
Yes. Celebs with a Z though.
Okay.
And then yeah. So I had a fun experience. I mean, I think it's one of those things where film festivals are very interesting experiences where it's sort of like, at least for me, the way that I do it, it's wake up, go to movies, go to sleep, and repeat, and find time to eat and stuff in between, eat a lot of Draft House food. And I didn't get to experience the free food this time around because I actually was mostly at the Zac and the Alamo Draft House this time around. I didn't spend a ton of days downtown. Which I honestly think might be the way to do it. You park for free at Draft House in the morning and then just shuttle your way if you need to go. And yeah,
if you're doing the film festival stuff, yes, probably. If you're trying to do any of the interactive things, I like to do that. You didn't have that badge this year, but I like to do the goofy stuff like that. Downtown is where it's at. I guess it was noticeably lighter crowd-wise this year. It was quite a bit easier to get the express passes with the app, minus the crashes. But I was able to get the Dungeons and Dragons. The only fast pass I wasn't able to get was one for the Violet Crown, which I don't know if you've ever been to the Violet Crown. It has like 20 seats in each theater, so it's very, very tiny.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Ritz was missed this year as a venue. I can't remember the last time it was a venue.
It wasn't a venue last year. I do know that.
Well, it's been gone since 2020.
Oh, has it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't one in I don't think it was one in 2019. I haven't. The last movie I remember seeing there was Peanut Butter Falcon, I saw that at the Ritz with Doug Benson.
Yeah, the last movie I saw at the Ritz with South by was I think what's the it was an Adam Scott movie where he was blind.
Oh, My Blind Brother.
Yes, yeah.
Which, by the way, I just wanted to say this is the first year I did not see Doug Benson.
I didn't see him either.
And I know he was there.
Yeah, he was doing a Doug Loves Movies for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go to any of the comedy stuff too. That's something that always escapes me because I think it's really front loaded on that first Friday.
Well, it's only like 3 days worth. It's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I think maybe Monday is the last day, so maybe it's 4 days. But I didn't go either. Last year I went to the Upright Citizens Brigade ASCAT show, which was really fun, and I wanted to go again this year, but I had some screenings that just wouldn't allow me to make it, and so I didn't get to do anything, and it's a bummer. I wish that it was more spread out.
Yeah, I think it was exclusively at Esther's Follies and Creek in the Cave, which are both very, very tiny venues. So there was some sort of award show that I wanted to see. I can't remember what it was
the
called.
Variety Comedy Awards.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Creek in the Cave is also not super easy to get to. It's a little bit of a walk.
Well, it's up on 7th, right?
I think it's further over than that, because isn't it by Stubbs?
I don't remember. I've been there. I mean, Creek in the Cave. Well, I mean, it's a famous comedy club-ish. If you were in New York when it was in the Creek in the Cave. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's no comedy mothership,
right? Well, you can't get canceled there, so I was, banging on the door trying to get in. I was like, I need to be protected.
It's on 7th Street near
7th and Red River.
Yeah, it's not that far. I mean, that is close to Stubbs, but I mean, if you're at Esther's Follies, it's right there. So, anyway, hyper local. So what was your favorite movie you saw?
So there were a couple that stood out to me. I think one of them was a movie called You Sing Loud, I Sing Louder. It's an independent film with Ewan McGregor and his real life daughter, whose name I definitely know, and I'm not looking up right now. Clara McGregor, and so basically it's like a really kind of intense family drama where he plays a guy whose daughter is just had an overdose, and she's just out of the hospital, and he's taking her on a road trip, apparently, supposedly to take her to go see a friend of his who's an artist. She's also an artist, and hang out there for a little while, but really he's taking her to rehab, and she doesn't know it, and they're kind of estranged. And he also has a past history of alcohol problems, and so it's this really, it's like a road trip movie, but it's also a father and daughter story. It's also a movie about addiction. And I thought it was really well done. Ewan McGregor's really good in it. His daughter's really good in it. And that was a really great premiere experience. One of those movies where you can hear the entire place sniffling, crying at some point. So that was fun. I also really liked Bottoms. Bottoms is a comedy film that is directed by I believe her name is Emma Seligman, and it's basically like a raunchy sex comedy, but it's about these girls played by Rachel Sennett and Ayo Edebiri, who is on The Bear, that TV show, and they basically play these two girls who are gay, and they create a female fight club at their school in order to try to hook up with cheerleaders. Basically, is the premise.
Nice.
And it's really funny because it sort of creates its own self-contained world where the teachers are having filthy conversations with the students and using a bunch of gay slurs, the very offensive gay slurs towards them, and talking about stuff openly, and the football players in the movie are really terrible and stupid, and it's got some really funny violent stuff in it. The football player Marshawn Lynch plays a teacher in it and has a great supporting role. and I just love the way I remember reading. I read an article saying that that the director wanted to make it like a Wet Hot American Summer style movie, and it kind of does hit that. It kind of also reminds me a little bit of like a 21 Jump Street, where like they look a little bit old to be playing kids, but also they've created their like own insulated style of humor and in world. And so I really enjoyed that one. That one's, I feel like, is going to be like a really big potential, crowd pleaser, sleeper hit. I believe it's coming out on I think MGM made it. So that was really good. And then, a handful of other things I saw were really good. Pay or Die, a documentary about insulin prices in the United States. Not the sexiest movie, but really effective and tells the story from different perspectives of, one, there's a group of parents whose son died because he was having to ration insulin because he couldn't afford it. And then they show like a mom and a daughter who's like maybe like 12 or 13, and they both have type 1 diabetes and they need insulin, and so like affording it for the two of them is super expensive, so they have to like travel to Canada in order to get insulin for a lower cost. And so that was really good. There was a movie that I'm curious to talk about it with you at some point. It wasn't one of my favorites because I think it does some things a little bit not so great, but it was called Late Night with the Devil. And it's this movie where like the premise of it is that there was this late night host who was like battling with Johnny Carson back in the day, and it's played by David Desmalchin. And
when I interviewed him, he told me, he's like, that small chin.
Oh,
I was like, oh, thanks, buddy.
That small chin. There we go.
Yeah.
And basically, in order to try to like save his show, there was an infamous night where they like summoned the devil on his TV show, and basically it's presented as like found footage of like, here's the unedited raw taping from that night of what went out on TV, and so it's like shot like a 80s style late night talk show, and it's like a complete episode of it, and just like there's different segments of them like bringing people on, and then like crazy scary stuff happening. It's so close to being really good. I think that sometimes there's a couple of moments where it kind of like breaks the rules of its logic and breaks the format a little bit, which I like kind of took me out of the movie. But I think that you would really enjoy like the aesthetic of like building the late night show and the execution of a lot of it.
Yeah, that's one of my. I love that kind of reverence to old TV stuff like that. That's one of the things I love. Have you ever watched the Larry Sanders Show?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've never done a full watch of it.
Yeah, it's it's shot as a late night show and then like a single camera show.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that like rips you out of it is they have like the stupidest, like there's no way the lineup would be like that for the guests.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like talking with like Steven Weber or whatever. And then like, up next we got Harrison Ford. Like, no fucking way. No. Harrison Ford would be the lead guest on that show. Anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and in this one, like, I just looked it up, and it's supposed to take place in 1977.
Okay.
And what it does too, I forgot to mention. So it's showing the footage of the telecast, and then when they're like cutting to commercial, it's like behind the scenes footage of like them talking about what's going on. So like him talking with his producer and his co-host and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's Larry Sanders in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how that's structured.
So again, it's so close to being a really, and it is fun. It is a fun horror movie. It's really close to being great. But whenever that does come out, we'll be sure to cover it on here because I want to see what you think about it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that. I didn't get to see as much as I wanted to see, just work and other things getting in the way. I did see, like I mentioned, Dungeons and Dragons, which was a lot of fun to be at a big premiere.
We'll cover that in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I did see a movie you saw at Sundance, a movie called Still, the Michael J. Fox documentary, with Michael J. Fox in attendance. And boy, oh boy, is his Parkinson's like condition, like, and this movie illustrates it, like, is it something to see in person? Like, he's like, I mean, for his part in the film, he talks about it, you know, not wanting pity, but man, you see someone like that, like, and it's a rough thing to see.
We'll talk about it when we talk about the movie when it eventually comes out on Apple, but there's moments in the beginning of that movie where he's like hauling ass, where it's just like, oh my God, I can't watch this, because he's like almost sprinting.
Oh yeah,
trying to get around.
When he came into the theater, like he had like, you know, people escorting him to make sure he didn't crash into something. Like we were sitting right across the aisle from him, and like somebody was sitting with us that assisted him in, but like that dude just sprint, like he just hauled ass in there, like, no, fuck you guys, I'm running, like,
yeah.
Geez,
and he mentions it too in the documentary, like, yeah, I'm gonna bust my ass.
Yeah,
it's just part of it.
I mean, there's a great joke at the beginning of that movie. Again, it's a hyper slick documentary, so I'm not quite sure how slice of life it is.
Yeah.
But there's a great scene where he like leaves his apartment in New York, with his, I guess, like a physical therapist sort of person, almost like a dance instructor, so to speak. But he walks past a woman, and like his shoe flies off, and like he falls on his ass, and she walks back to see if he's okay, and he's like, "Oh, you knocked me off my feet," and it's a fucking great line. And I'm like, man, did this really happen? Like, is this like his comedic timing was really great in that, if it's indeed honest documentary. But I mean, whatever, it was a real crowd pleasing documentary, of course. Yeah, we'll talk about that when that hits Apple. A movie you and I saw together was the last movie I saw, called A Disturbance in the Force, a documentary on the making of the Star Wars holiday special, which, fill me in, did you know about it before you heard about this movie?
I knew about it. I've never seen it, but I am familiar with like some of like the bits and pieces of it, for sure. Yeah,
famously lost media for Star Wars. It was released in November 17th, 1978, a week after I was born, Cody, like 7 days after I was born. My parents probably didn't watch it. They were probably pissed off Dallas wasn't on, frankly. Because it preempted Dallas famously. I think it shows that at the beginning of the film, like this program will not be seen tonight. Anyway, it's a special I've seen a bunch. It's really bad. A documentary that I thought was also pretty slick. I don't know, if you're unfamiliar with the show, like the filmmakers said that you could replace watching the special with this documentary. I don't know that that's true. A lot of interesting sort of history on the 70s variety stuff, which I don't know how familiar you were with. Even that's before even my time, but like the vestiges of it, like the Muppet Show, crept into my childhood.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job of contextualizing it. There was some weird responses from people on Letterboxd with this documentary, and I thought that it was perfectly well edited and informative. Yeah. I think the talking heads are good. I think the MVP of the talking heads is probably Taron Killam, who probably gets the most, like, it's stuff that's like played for laughs and also for explanation, but I think he gets probably the most juice out of everything.
Well, I think the most interesting one to me was Seth Green, and I think I mentioned it to you, maybe on this or maybe not somewhere else. But he also like has a famous lost Star Wars show,
right?
That they previewed in there called Detours, which was produced. I think they produced something like 60 episodes before Disney bought Lucasfilm, and so it's just been shelved. Like it exists.
39 episodes.
39, okay. And he like worked closely with George Lucas on this, and it probably would have been terrible, let's be honest. It probably would not have been good, but it at least existed. And I think that was some of the more fascinating tidbits from him, celebrity-wise. There was, of course, Bruce Vilanch, who was a writer on the Star Wars Holiday Special. Were you familiar with Bruce Vilanch? I can't remember. He's a really larger-than-life, weird...
I know him from Hollywood Squares.
Yes, okay. That's what I was thinking of. Like, yeah. And then, like, the variety show producers from the era, and a guy who like that was his job, was to direct variety shows. I think the one thing that kind of blows me away when I think about it now, like people coming to it from the outside, the Star Wars Holiday Special centers on Wookiees, aka whatever Chewbacca is. And it spends like the first almost 10 minutes with no English dialogue. It's just roaring and bleeding and grunting and stuff. And I think it's such a weird thing that somehow made that variety show stuff aside, that somehow made it on TV is amazing to me. Of course, I think Donny Osmond says it, like it was only ever supposed to be seen once.
Right.
Like it was never supposed to be. Donny Osmond has some great insight too, by the way. If you've ever looked for like insight into like what your past career has been and whether or not you should be ashamed of it, it's Donny Osmond is perfectly suited for that. Anyway, so that's the three I saw. I tried to see Black Barbie, a documentary. That's when I got shut out on at Violet Crown, and I missed the window for the screening here. Movie I'm pretty curious to see. I really wanted to see Air.
Yeah.
Didn't pan out though. I was not feeling too well on Saturday and had to miss.
It'll be out in a couple weeks. It would have been cool to see Affleck and Damon and everyone that was there, but it of course got a rapturous reception. These things always do, so don't let any of that fool you. Yeah, that is one thing. I mean, so Flamin' Hot won the audience award.
I didn't see it.
And I saw that, and it's fine. But man, like a dozen applause breaks in that movie where like someone just delivers a line and then the crowd erupts at some, fucking, generic ass line. I don't know. The movie itself is fine. It'll be out in June, so we'll talk about it. But man, you would have thought that it was like the best movie of all time if you listened just to the crowd at that. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to trust a review coming out of a film festival because I think everything that I've seen is like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with the 5 reviews that were there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I gave a positive review to Dungeons and Dragons, but like it wasn't, it had applause breaks too. And I can understand why. The cast is there. It's exciting. It's probably the most electric environment you can see a blockbuster like that in.
For sure.
But yeah, lots of fun. I'm looking forward to going back again next year. I didn't wear myself out this year, which is something that I've done in the past. I did. My best freebie though was a free pair of cowboy boots, Cody.
Yeah.
Which I'm not wearing, but I will for the next show. I promise.
Okay. Okay. Well,
I promise.
We'll have to see
it.
Yeah. You have to show feet.
Well, this is going to cost you. Anything else before we move on?
No, let's get to the reviews. South by Southwest is back. Looking forward also to doing it next year too. So.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and move on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
This week we have Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
We are at war. We will annihilate everything. Champions of this realm can do nothing to stop us.
You are very menacing. I just want you to know that.
A lot has changed in the last few years. The wizard gave me superpowers. And then everybody got superpowers.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
All right, here's the situation.
Started from the bottom, now the whole team here.
The daughters of Atlas are coming to hunt us.
Children stole the power of the gods. You ripped it from our father's core.
Okay, I feel like maybe I should be writing all this down.
Give us the powers, child.
Your world will not survive this. You want these powers? Come get them! Hey, Khaleesi!
So this is the sequel to 2019's Shazam, a movie that I don't know that we reviewed on this show. I'd really have to look it up, but
I'm not sure.
Anyway, a movie that I was fine with. I don't know what you thought of the first one, Cody.
I didn't care much for it.
This is, of course, looks like we did talk about it in episode 122. That was a long time ago, Cody.
Yeah.
That was also with the Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson movie Unicorn Store.
Ooh.
Good week
That was
there.
a rough one.
Anyway, there was this being the DC Universe movie, DC Extended Universe film, notably the first movie to come out since the announcement in January that James Gunn and Peter Seraphim, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Anyway, the new guys in charge of DC are kind of resetting the slate, leaving me and a bunch of other people wondering where the hell this Shazam fits into that announcement coming up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the movie clears anything up in that regard. Cody, tell us about Shazam! Fury of the Gods and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so I mean, the idea behind Shazam, for anyone who doesn't know, is, and please correct me, Jerrod, if I get this wrong in some way, but it is a kid who is, I guess, in the first one, like 15, 16, something like that, is bequeathed with powers that allow him, it's sort of like Big, right? Where if he says this word, Shazam, he turns into like a grown adult who has superpowers. Well,
yeah. I mean, he's the champion of the realm, and the Shazam stands for like wisdom of Solomon, strength of Hercules.
Yeah,
whatever.
But and so, I guess what ended up happening at the end of the last one, I don't remember, but just from context, is that like he plays a kid who's in like, I guess a foster home. Is that what that is?
It's like it's a group. Well, yeah, it's like a group foster home. He's got it's one family, like one couple,
and his powers get spread to them, so now they are like a superhero team. And so what you have here is like, it's frustrating because I think with this type of movie, which is like kind of like a slapsticky kind of thing, you have this thing where Zachary Levi is playing like a teenager in his own body, and so he's like kind of like wisecracking and dumb and immature and like with a movie that has such a comedy backbone, it just feels like a weird opportunity to like make the stakes as big as they are in this movie, because I feel like this is like, if you're going to do a small stakes story, which I think more of these Marvel movies and DC movies need, this would have been a good movie to do so. It's not. Of course, it is some like extinction level, like the gods have.
Even Suicide Squad, the first one, was an extinction level, and those were all like dipshits with no powers.
Yeah. It's just exhausting. But like, what ends up happening is like you have these goddesses who played by Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, and Rachel Ziegler, who I think this is only like the second thing she's ever done. I think this is the only, like, West Side Story is the only thing she's ever been in aside from this.
Really?
Yeah, and so basically they play like sisters who are goddesses who are wanting to plant a tree on Earth that's gonna.
Oh, okay, hold on. They're the daughters of Atlas.
Okay. And
one of the Titans from Greek mythology, and his powers were stolen. Part of the Shazam. It's S is for Solomon, H is for Hercules. I think the first A is for Atlas. So like his powers were stolen and given to Shazam, in part. I don't know why they're not. I don't know. Whatever. That's what, and they're wanting to get those powers back.
Right.
So yes,
and
then, also restore the Garden of Eden or something. I don't know. They're
chasing around a golden apple for a little while in the movie.
I don't remember where the golden apple came from, by the way. I don't think I went to the bathroom, but I don't remember where the golden apple.
It's the seed of the tree of life.
Yeah, I know, but like all of a sudden it was there, and I don't remember it being one.
Oh, it was stolen. It was the thing that was stolen from like the underground lair that the Shazam guys had. They let Helen Mirren into it.
Yes,
like unopposed, and then she goes in and steals it, I think is how it works. Anyway,
way into the weeds.
It's just one of those things where I think that like the tone of it is oftentimes mismatched with the severity of the extinction level event part of it, and I think that is doesn't always work. It's interesting that like Zachary Levi and his character are ostensibly the main character of the movie. It's called Shazam, and he is Shazam, and he almost like doesn't have an arc. And it's weird that that the main character of the movie doesn't really have an arc, because really the only person who has an arc is Freddy, played by Jack Dylan Grazer as a kid, and then Adam Brody as an adult. But he has like a full-fledged like love story, and
he's almost, I couldn't tell you, but he's probably on screen almost as much as Zachary Levi. Like, he's essentially the co-star of this movie.
Yeah, he totally is.
Like, it reminds me of those like when you watch, like if you go back and watch Batman Returns or something, like no one gives a shit about Batman. He's just there. It's like all about Catwoman and the Penguin.
Yeah.
Like, that's what this reminds me of.
And it's such a weird thing because, you know, by creating this superhero team, like nobody on the team aside from like, you know, Billy, who is the Zachary Levi character, and Freddy, like have any type of personality. Like there's a small thing with like the girl Mary, who like is like moving from the nest and like is like growing up and is gonna spend less time around the rest of the family and finding friends her own age and stuff like that. But like the other three, I couldn't even tell you their names or what they do or what's going on with them.
Well, Mary is the only one who plays it in this movie, not in the last one. Yeah, she's the same actress. I don't know who the other actors are, except for Megan Good plays the younger sister, who is like mentions Skittles by name and by catchphrase,
man,
like 10 times.
The product placement of Skittles in this movie is so weird.
It's not as bad as IHOP was in Man of Steel. I don't know if you remember that.
I do, but I don't remember. I mean, like the egregious 2 mentions of Taste the Rainbow. In the movie, like it's enough to do it once and then they do it again.
Yeah.
Which is just ridiculous. But you know, it's one of those things where I just never found the footing with this. Like I said, I feel like the tone is oftentimes super serious and oftentimes super silly. I do think that there is a little bit of humor that Zachary Levi can extend from it, but it is kind of like a one joke, one note thing where like at this point he's like 17, like right, as Shazam, he's acting like he's 12.
Yeah.
Which is a weird mismatch too. Like I said, he doesn't really have much of an arc, except for, like maybe, like growing up is like the arc, but there's nothing there in particular. And it's especially strange because like Billy as a kid or as a 17-year-old, like is played by an actor named Asher Angel, who really isn't like in the movie at all, almost.
Yeah.
He's barely in it. And so, what you get at the end of the day is just kind of like another middling, kind of DC movie where I didn't find myself interested by the plot. I think it's just another kind of like giant CG glob of, nothingness. It's got some like, you were mentioning too the future of these things, and it's so hard to tell because like there's a cameo in it that might be the last appearance of this actor playing this character.
We can go ahead and say it because apparently it was all over the commercials. It's Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and again, like, I think they've said that this might be like the last time she ever plays it, and it's in such a corny ass, like, nonsensical cameo. Really, she's just there for kind of like one thing, which is super corny. And why she's there is like completely unexplained, or how she knows about it is totally unexplained. And then there's a post-credit sequence that seemingly sets something else up within the universe. That also, like, I don't understand how that's going to work out, especially because it seemingly coexists with James Gunn's universe.
Yeah, so that's the thing that where I'm confused is like you've got to, let's just spoil it because it's out there. You've got like a, I can't remember what the team is called, but it's like, are
you talking about the Justice?
Well, no, it's like the Amanda Waller's team.
Oh.
From it's Argus is what it's called. You've got John Economos, which is Steve Agee, and then Jennifer Holland, who I can't remember what her character's name is.
But it's from Peacemaker, right?
Right. Well, they started in the Suicide Squad, and they're both major characters in Peacemaker. And they're recruiting. They're at the end of the film. They're trying to recruit Shazam for the Justice Society, which has appeared in Black Adam, which I still haven't seen. And I don't know if they're in Black Adam either. But so from what we understand, like the Peacemaker series is still going on.
Right.
Like that's moving forward. That's a great, I don't know if you've watched the show, but it's fucking great. Probably the single best thing to come out of this whole DC universe thing.
And there's also a Waller TV show coming, right?
Yeah. So that's, of course, Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis, who apparently is still going to continue in this role as well. From what I understand, The Flash may reset this stuff and move it forward. But for right now, and problems with the movie notwithstanding, like that's my biggest beef is like, is this thing just an orphan of shitty things that are going nowhere or what? Because there's a scene at the end, like you mentioned, with Mark Strong, who was the villain in the first film, where it's like setting up some long-term thing, which who knows if that's even going to happen? Who knows if Zachary Levi is going to be playing Shazam? This movie kind of bombed with a $30 million opening. This is already on the books to be reset. There's no Wonder Woman 3 coming anytime soon. Gal Gadot there's a funny-ish scene early in the film where he's clearly talking to Wonder Woman and you only see the back of her head. And then something else happens. Reminiscent of the Superman cameo at the end of the first Shazam. Yeah. But it's just like, are we supposed to give a shit? And that's the fucking fine line that you walk with these movies is they have to be standalone enough. And I think the first Shazam was. It has to stand on its own enough for you to care about it without having to see 10,000 other things. And Marvel's really kind of fallen off that bandwagon too. I think the only thing they ever did it really super successfully with was the Captain America movies. And then occasionally like Guardians of the Galaxy. But I think the first Shazam did that. This one doesn't. This one expects you to have remembered everything about the first Shazam, which, sorry, I don't. And then also care about the larger picture of this DC universe thing. Mere month and a half or whatever after we were told that, sorry, everything's getting reset.
Yeah.
I just don't care. Like, that's the problem, is I don't care. I went into this thing not caring. Not because I didn't enjoy the first movie. I did enjoy the first movie. Just knowing though that this thing is an orphan. I mean, I guess that's not the right choice of words for a movie that features literal orphans, but I mean, it is orphaned by the studio essentially. Like, I don't know, like, did this time I invested in this movie mean anything on its own? And I don't think it does. And I think that's the biggest issue with it. Like, I think it's got a great cast. I like Zachary Levi. I like the little bit of Adam Brody. I like Jack Dylan Grazer. Rachel Zegler's good. Helen Mirren is good. Lucy Liu is the only one really kind of digging into that role.
Yeah.
Jaimin Hansu gets some funny stuff to do. But at the end of the day, like, it just doesn't seem to really mean much on its own or probably as a larger part of this whole, which is, I guess, it was a little too late to try to sever any ties. I don't know why you keep up with the post-credits sequence if it's not going to move forward. That's a curious move to me.
Well, and also too, like, I mean, I think the problem is that the end of the movie is sort of like reliant on that Wonder Woman cameo, and I think they might have like written themselves into a hole with that. And I get that's fine with me. That part is fine with me. Like, if it was the swan song of Wonder Woman 2, whatever. But like, if you're not going to move forward, like the Peacemaker connection thing, like if that's not going to move forward, why would you include that in the movie? Right.
And then the stuff with Mark Strong at the very end. Like, if that's not going to move forward, why would you include it in the movie?
That's fair.
And that's a curiosity I have. Like, does this mean anything? Is this like the end of Incredible Hulk, where we saw Tim Blake Nelson turning into the leader? Which, he is coming back now, so never mind. But for 15 years, no one gave a shit. I don't know. It's just, it feels like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that is just not going to mean anything very, very soon.
Yeah. Which, again, in my opinion, speaks to like, well, then why do you make this giant extinction level god stuff when like there's, and especially when you're like, because the idea that they're all kids or teenagers gets completely lost in the shuffle when you have this extinction level event. When the stakes are that high, there's no story about like being a kid or being a teen or being overwhelmed or any of like, there's no juice to it. There's nothing behind the idea that these are all kids as like in adult bodies being superheroes, like aside from like a couple of jokes. That's really all it brings to the table. And
you really kind of sliced that characterization in two when you took the Freddy character and gave him the love interest in Rachel Zegler.
Right.
As opposed to giving that to the Billy Batson character.
Yeah, a strange choice.
I mean, I guess probably because Jack Dylan Grazer has the bigger profile as an actor. I don't know. Like, you just want to do more with him. But yeah, it's a weird like severing of the two, because like that would have really tied everything together. But I don't know. I just don't know what the thought process was in this movie. Like, it's clearly was started in a different era. And where it was finished is decidedly something else. I just wonder what their plans are for this, because at the end of the day, that's what we're wondering, right? Like, we're wondering, like, well, is this even gonna fucking matter? Are we gonna get a reboot of Wonder Woman in 2 years and anything else like that? So
yeah. Anyway,
what's your grade for Shazam: Fury of the Gods, Cody?
So I'm giving it a C, which I think is about what I gave the first Shazam. So for me, it's not, I mean, like, it's probably worse than the first one, but I just don't remember it all that well. Yeah, for me, it just doesn't work for me. It's just not for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a C+. Like, I didn't hate it, but I just feel like there's not a lot here to recommend, again, just because of the questions it leaves behind. Because this doesn't happen in a vacuum, at least for people like us. Like, we know there's all kinds of behind the scenes shit stewing about it. So, like, was the like Mark Strong just like got paid anyway? Like, what happened? Yeah. Like, anyway, next up I think is Flash, right, for DC.
It should be, yeah.
And then there's Blue Beetle and then Aquaman, and I think that's the last of the existing things.
Yeah, I don't see where the upcoming stuff is. Oh, yeah, so The Flash is next, June 16th, Blue Beetle, August 18th, and Aquaman, Christmas.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. Cody, next week John Wick, finally?
Yes, it is.
I'm seeing that tomorrow night. I know it's damn near 3 hours long.
2 hours and 49 minutes.
It premiered, North American premiere at South by Southwest. I didn't know anybody that went to see it. I know there's people, I think our Houston film critics buddies have seen it, right?
Yeah, and it screened in San Antonio on Tuesday of last week, but I was still in Austin, so I missed it. But I've got tickets for Thursday, so I'll be seeing it on Thursday night. And staying up late that night, I guess. But I've heard really good things. I've heard that like the last hour of the movie is like one action sequence that is apparently like amazing. So I love those movies. I think they're great. I think they're super fun. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's 2 hours and 49 minutes is a long time. Oh yeah, don't pretend like you're okay with it now, you ass. I'm okay with like if there's a lot of action sequences in it. I don't want like a 2 hour and 49 minute like historical drama may not be,
or like a Judd Apatow comedy.
Yeah. But if there's like 30-minute action sequences that like fly by, yeah, I'll go for it.
Okay, yeah. All right, if you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter at CineSnob, Facebook CineSnobNet, YouTube.com/CineSnob. Cody, anything else you want to plug before we go?
No, well, letterboxd.com/CineSnob Cody if you want to keep track. I'm still up to date. I have all my South by Southwest grades and scores on there. I think I've watched 80 movies this year, and it's only March. Jesus Christ.
Those festivals really do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you can find some of our coverage of South by Southwest on News 4 WAI and FoxSanAntonio.com. Elsewhere too, but those are the two big places in San Antonio. All right. Anything else before we go?
No, that's all.
All right. On that note, I am Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.